Welcome to Financial Footsteps, candid conversations with financial leaders, the podcast that takes you deep into the minds of the masters behind the numbers. Join host Chad Dean as he connects with financial leaders as they share their journeys so that we can gain valuable insight from their failures and triumphs. Get ready for candid conversations, behind-the-scenes anecdotes, and practical wisdom that will transform the way you think about your career in finance. Put down the balance sheet and listen in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Financial Footsteps, where we explore the background and careers of financial leaders for the benefit of those who want to follow in their footsteps. My name is Chad Dean, your host. I've been a recruiter for 27 years, and I am the owner and CEO of Integrated Management Resources, a Phoenix-based executive recruiting firm that was established 33 years ago. Integrated is the sponsor of this podcast today. So I am very excited about our guest today, Scott Magnano. Scott has had a long career in accounting and finance and is full of wisdom that I know will be incredible benefit to our listeners. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Scott is the former CFO of Medix Health, which was sold last October. And since then, he has been retained to help the company through post-acquisition strategy. Do I have that right?
That is correct.
Fantastic. So let's start and give the listeners a little background on you personally and family and hobbies
Absolutely.
and that kind of stuff.
For sure. So I'm a native New Englander. So grew up in Connecticut, went to college in Connecticut, met my wife in Connecticut. She's from New Hampshire. And about just shy of 10 years ago, we were sitting there talking after a big snowstorm, about 30 inches hit the ground. And I'm like, I'm not so sure of this white stuff anymore, right? I always wanted to live somewhere warm. So we kind of looked at each other and just decided, let's do it, right? Let's put the house on the market. Let's move. Kids were little at the time. I will say my parents were not very fond of the decision to take the grandkids away, especially the only granddaughter.
Until they visited, right?
Exactly, right? We packed up the house. We moved to Arizona. We had been out here half a dozen times and just loved the environment. People are so nice. They're so social. It just felt like home when we came out here. So we knew this. And across the country, I was the first one to leave the family. So it was a big deal. Yeah, so we moved and been so happy that we've been here. And then been married almost 15 years in July. And then have two little ones, 10 and 13. So they certainly keep us busy. And I always tell people the best job I've ever had is being a dad.
Amen to that.
It's so rewarding and so challenging at the same time, right? But it's wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, it is certainly a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
That's I always tell people it's hard to raise good kids because it takes a lot of work.
Yes,
It does. What do you do for fun?
So with two kids, a lot of running around, right? With my son's in club baseball, which
I know that.
pretty big out here, right? So, I have a lot of that. And it's just so, I played sports when I was little. I stunk at baseball, right? So it's good to see, him doing well in a sport that I was challenged in. My daughter, she's, into horseback riding and dance and gymnastics. And so, again, this is the beauty of being a parent, is being able to, participate in that. And again, being out here in Arizona, I try to hit the links every once in a while, and it's fair to say that I get my money's worth on a per swing basis.
Nice.
As to how it goes, but it's just enjoying the time out here.
For those that don't know, club baseball, generally you're at the ballpark all day Saturday for the privilege of playing to then come back to the ballpark on Sunday, and that's the goal. And we went through that for a number of years, but it's so much fun, and it goes by quickly. Mine are 19 and 17, no longer, well, one's playing college sports, but it goes by quick.
It does.
I'm glad you're having the time of your life right now. That's fantastic. So before we get into this, I didn't tell Scott I was going to do this, but actually I didn't know I was going to do it, but I am holding this up for the benefit of those that are watching the actual video, there are pages and pages and pages of recommendations on LinkedIn. I encourage you to go and look at all the recommendations that Scott has on LinkedIn. And I might embarrass him a little bit because I think he's pretty humble, but I'm just going to pull out some of the things that I read on here that will give a little bit of credit. And I apologize, I have to remove my glasses in order to read. But here's some of the words: inspire, supportive, motivate, keen insight into organizational metrics. I was lucky enough to work for Scott at XYZ. Extremely collaborative, friendly and outgoing personality, wonderful family-oriented guy, proactive, collaborative, effective business partner, a valuable resource, intelligent, possesses a rare combination of financial acumen, innovative thinking combined with a collaborative style. And I could go on and on. I have pages of highlights, but I don't want to lose the audience. But it's safe to say that Scott, I think, is a very well-respected leader. And so sorry to embarrass you there, but I just wanted to put that out as far as, the street cred of having you on here, and I do appreciate that. So let's go back. We were talking just before we came on that you played soccer in college, and you did not go to school for accounting and finance. So let's kind of go through that.
Yeah. So, late high school, I remember I was trying to decide, what am I going to be when I grow up, right? And so, one minute I wanted to be an architect, right? And then another minute I wanted to be a PE teacher. And then, ultimately I decided, oh, I want to teach, but I want to teach math. So I went to school for a double major, math education, and then went to play soccer as well at Quinnipiac, which is a small school, private school in Connecticut. And ultimately decided to transfer from Quinnipiac after my freshman year and went to another school in Connecticut, Eastern Connecticut. And that was the plan, was math teacher. And the thing that was interesting was they don't put you in a classroom until you're a junior. I remember going through my first assignment, and I'm literally 30 minutes in, and I'm like, I don't think this is my calling, right? And so I'm sitting there going, I'm a junior, double major, and I'm supposed to be a teacher, and now this isn't what I want to do.
Uh-oh.
Right? So I'm thinking to myself, what do I do with a math degree, right? And so, as you may know, Connecticut is the insurance capital of the world. And so, I was able to link up with a family friend who worked at a major insurer there, and kind of did the accounts payable back office, started, and I actually started school. I didn't graduate until June of 99. I started my full-time job in December because I only had a couple credits, which was awesome, right? Because I didn't have to go find a job right after graduating. I already had a full-time job, and I was taking a couple night classes just to finish the credits. And that was kind of the start of it.
Wow. And so you started out just doing accounting and finance jobs, and what did the family friend sell you on this, or were you just like, okay, well, like what inspired you to take a job in accounting and finance?
It was kind of like one of those of having that conversation with him, because I knew he worked at the insurer of what do I do with a math degree? And then we started talking about the actuarial route, but let's just get you in, right? Start in accounting role, and then we'll kind of as they say, get your foot in the door, and then we'll figure out where you go from there. So it was kind of, as most, I would imagine most kids is, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, but here I am, and I'll start here.
So you were there for 9 years. What transpired over those 9 years? And I always like to ask, did you kind of develop a passion for this line of business and in this line of work?
Yeah, it's interesting. So started in the AP role as an individual contributor, and then started interacting with each of the department leads, and started working on budgeting, and then doing some forecasting, expense forecasting with them. And then as my career kind of morphed from there and at that company. And it was the Hartford, so a very large insurance company. And I then became a financial analyst supporting a bunch of departments on the claims. And then we had a project where we were potentially acquiring another company. And so it was locking ourselves in a room, doing some financial modeling around synergies and offices and geography and where can we combine organizations and what would that look like. And that was like my first true dabble right into analysis. I'm like, this is super fun. I love modeling. I love trying to you know take information and tell a story, right, and be able to help make decisions around what it does look like. And then I worked in actuarial a little bit at the Hartford as well. And for me, I mean, actuaries, God bless them, they are incredibly brilliant. But to become an actuary, you got to, pass a series of tests that are intense, right?
You got to really be into it, right?
And you got to be a data junkie. And I'm a data junkie, but I also like telling the story. I like being immersed in the business. I like process improvement. I was a green belt Six Sigma, so trying to understand where there's opportunities for us to make improvements. So I was like, I like the numbers aspect, but not to the degree of that's where I'm going to focus. But my time at the Hartford, I was very disciplined around exposure to different areas. So I worked in a claims department, then I worked in personal insurance, then I worked in small insurance. So just trying to get a full understanding of the operation and how they interact with one another, I think was in that background really led me to, the foundation, if you will, right, for my future career.
Did you find that not having a finance degree held you back at all?
It's funny, no. And a story. I remember when I had a mentor when I was at the Hartford, and I was probably about 3-4 years in there, and then we started having a conversation around, do I get an MBA, right? Don't I? And the answer I got from him was not what I was expecting. His answer was, you could, by all means, it's not going to hurt you, but you can really build something special here, right? You can build a reputation. Your reputation already is really strong. Is just continue to work hard, right? Continue to get exposure. Continue to immerse yourself, get yourself at the table so you can learn the business. That will be so valuable for you as you go forward. And again, not saying yes or no, but just saying, it's okay if that's not what you want to do, but take advantage of it and just work your butt off, right? And so that kind of resonated. And as you said, I'm not the traditional background of a CFO, right? I didn't get my degree in accounting. I didn't get my degree in finance. I don't have my MBA. I don't have my CPA. I'm a math major, right? And here we are coming off a successful exit in my first CFO role. And if I was to turn back the clock to when I graduated, being CFO would not have been one of the things that I thought I would be doing.
Yeah. How did you? You said hard work, and I actually did a LinkedIn post about this the other day of how can people stand out of the crowd, right? You're not the only person at Hartford that wants to succeed. I'm sure there are a lot of ambitious people there. Why do you think you were picked over and over again for these different groups? Did you have a manager that pulled you along? Was it the mentor that recommended? Like, how can somebody that's junior in their career stand out from the crowd in a large organization like that?
Yeah. So for me, it was really focusing on learning the business, right? And so becoming not just the finance guy or the finance gal, it's, becoming a true business partner. And then when I see roles that I felt were the logical next step, I went after them. I didn't wait for my number to be called. I saw them. I had dialogue, right, with my manager around, I think this is really compelling, right, and really would be a good next step for me, and getting their support, right, because there's so many applying for a new job can be so uncomfortable for people. For me, it's never been uncomfortable because I'm all about transparency and being just authentic and true and just saying, this is something that looks interesting to me. What do you think? Do you think I'm ready, or do I still have things to finish here? And so it's funny though, I do look back at my peers when I was at the Hartford, and so many of them have gone on to do some amazing things in leadership roles, across the gamut. And so working for a very large company right out of college was absolutely the right thing for me to do, just because the level of training and the level of exposure and just the broadness of the company. You can move around and learn so much in those types of environments versus getting right out of college and working for a small company. You don't have those opportunities as much at your disposal.
I got a funny question. It just came to my mind because you're talking about learning so much and doing all this research, and for those that are younger, they don't realize that you were basically there before the internet, right? Or at the onset of the internet. So how do you learn a bunch of stuff when there's no internet?
Yeah. So it's about just being eager and reaching out, right? And because the company, again, they had pretty common, they would have town halls with different areas of the company. Anyone could come in, right, and listen. And they had a huge auditorium, right? So it held a lot of employees. I would take every opportunity I could, even if I was in claims, if they're talking about what's going on in personal insurance or workers' comp, or I, if I had the capacity and ability, it wasn't working on something that I need to get done, I would go listen to those all day long.
That's applicable to today as well. Not only does it give you insight to your own organization that it's probably hard to find on the internet, but it also opens up networking opportunities.
Absolutely.
You're sitting next to somebody in operations or somebody in HR, who knows what. So what along the way? I always like to ask this question: when did you know that you wanted to be a CFO?
Not until, honestly, till after I moved out here. Because initially it was, I want to be in a leadership role. Is part of me sometimes I want to run a business or an arm of a business. There's many different types of CFOs. I kind of liken myself to the strategic operational CFO, right? So, really trying to roll up my sleeves and understand the operation. I truly believe that you can't be successful in a leadership role, let alone a CFO role, if you don't understand the business and you're not immersing yourself in learning it along the way. And in my role prior to going to Medix as a CFO, I built out an FP&A organization from scratch. It's crazy you see so many posts on LinkedIn around the topic. I've experienced in my career as well is the full appreciation and understanding of what FP&A is and the value it can bring to our organization. It sometimes just gets lumped in with accounting, right? And this is your back office. You do your debits and your credits and you close the books. There is so much more value that we bring to the table, and being able to build that organization from scratch, seeing how it started changing the conversations and the dialogue and decisions that we were making, I was like, you know what? I think I'm ready for that next step. And it was really just, it wasn't by design. I didn't reach out to recruiters and say I'm looking for a CFO job, right? It just happened, right?
Yeah. I don't want to discourage. I'm very careful about discouraging people from accounting, but I ask people that are in accounting and they're, what do you want to do next? They say, I want to go into finance. And I was asked why. And so many times the answer is it's because FP&A is like the friend of the CFO, whereas accounting is just doing their job, right? And so you have more exposure to the CFO in FP&A. Is that accurate?
I think it's an accurate statement. I mean, you're certainly more connected with the business, right? Because you're the eyes and ears. I always say, like, we're the fortune tellers, right? Our job is to advise and tell the future for the company as to what we're seeing and how we're tracking. The power of data is no company I've ever worked for where there's not cyclicality to our business. It doesn't matter. I'm a true believer that data decisions are the best decisions. Doesn't mean that things that we're changing on operational or sales perspective can't change historical trends, but let's ground ourselves in what historically has happened, right? And so I think when you think about FP&A, it absolutely, you could be the CEO's right hand person, right, in that role, as long as they value because there's, again, it's one of those where do they value or not value, right, the perspective of FP&A.
Gotcha. So let's kind of switch gears, and you did mention that you knew you wanted to be a leader. When did that realization come about? Were you a natural leader, and what was like your first experience at leadership?
Back in my true people leadership, I would say was at Travelers. That was my second role in my career, and it's more of a leadership from an overall P&L for the region. And so with that came a lot of demands and a lot of decision making and a lot of strategy. And you know, I would our sales team would be on appointments with clients. I would join them, right, just to kind of listen and hear and feel and understand some of their challenges that they're having when we're all about just drive new business. And it's not that simple, right? You got to understand the dynamics of the business, and we're one of 15 folders they can pull out to sell. And how do we get better as a company? How do we get better as individuals and leaders to really give our sales team the toolbox and everything they need to be successful? And then seeing how we transformed the way that we approached the business, how we allocated funds, how we earmarked marketing dollars with our agency partners, how we segmented our agencies, because we had 1,500 agencies for 12 salespeople. That's a lot of calls, right? And you can't handle them all the same. So we got to be strategic around how do we handle that. And so that was the full first experience of leadership and seeing the results of thinking through the challenges. And then from a people perspective, before I joined Medics, was again building out an FP&A organization and just seeing the impact and the passion, right? We're probably use that word a lot today, of our team and how we continue to assist all of our business leaders in making good, sound decisions. And I knew I was doing a good job when I didn't need to ask that we be added to meetings, that we were brought into meetings, right? And then I was like, okay, we're there, right? We've made that leap that we needed to. They understand the value, and we're really doing some amazing things there.
I was never formally trained to manage an individual, right?
Mhm.
And I found it extremely challenging when I bought the business. I had to manage people, and I was terrible at it.
Mhm.
I had my MBA, but I don't remember a class teaching you how to manage, really. So did you find yourself a natural leader, and what's your leadership style?
Yeah. So for me, it's whether it's peer to peer. As I've gone through my career now, it's more around how do you manage peer to peer at an executive level versus individuals in direct reports. It's been a learning of everyone's different, right? How people like to be recognized is different, right? How people like to be approached with business challenges is different. And so some people want you to meet prior to a meeting, right? And discuss the business challenge. And you got to be able to appreciate, recognize that, and act on it. And they'll appreciate you more. They'll trust you more, right? When you do that. And then from a direct reports is similar in nature, where there's rarely where we are talking about a business challenge or formulating our forecast or talking about strategy where I'm not bringing my FP&A lead with me, because my job is, I've always viewed my job is to groom the next leader of this organization. Then whether it's with us or with, but I love to look back and you mentioned some of the recommendations of folks. Some of those are my direct reports, and they're doing some amazing things still, right? And be able to just watch their journey. That's my goal, right? Is that you can walk away from this role, and this is how I led and how I taught is really going to propel you for what's next.
Was that natural to you?
It was, right? And I think it's, goes back to my playing days in sports, right? Similar thing of, I was a goalkeeper, right? So I loved it, right? I was pretty critical to either losing a game, right? Or help winning a game. But if we don't score goals, it doesn't matter what I do, right? And so, as a leader on the field, whether it's the court, the field, is you're only as good as your weakest link, right? And so it's our job as leaders to make sure that we're supporting and helping the greater good, because you can have the best forward or the best goalkeeper, but if you're not a cohesive, solid team that trusts one another, you're not going to be successful.
That goes for business as well.
It does. It does. Absolutely.
So you mentioned it, so I'm going to go ahead and just jump on it. Passion. I played college golf, and one of my oldest son plays in college. He's similar to me, has the ability to develop a passion. So where do you, and you obviously had to have passion for soccer to get to the level that you did, and I hear a passion in your voice for business and what you do and helping people. Where does that stem from for you?
I'm just a competitive person to begin with. I think having an older brother that's just as competitive, probably helped. And I also think that growing up in the environment I was in, seeing my parents work their tail off, different shifts. My dad worked in the mornings, my mom worked in the evenings, and so there was always like a 2-hour gap in between. And so my mom was a nurse, so we'd sit in the waiting room at the hospital for 2 hours until my dad got off and took us home. And as a kid, you don't really understand like that, right? And so, and yet they were always at our events. They were always hosting, a little bit of back in my hometown. My parents would host our friends, 30, 40 kids every weekend would come over our house, right? And it was just, they wanted somewhere safe for them to be, somewhere where they can do good things or not do bad things, right? And seeing that and seeing how they raised us, and then when I got out to the real world, the competitive nature of myself, I don't like losing. I don't like being average. I don't like mediocrity. My fantasy football team can attest to that. I always want to, I made a promise to myself, wherever I go, I always want to leave the place better. And I can firmly say that, every role I've been, I truly believe I've left that place better. And it's not, it's so too, is you hear a lot about hard work. Yes, hard work's important. To me, working smarter is more important than working harder. There's a lot to get done. There's a lot of responsibilities. We got to continue to get smarter along the way, whether it's using tools, whether it's when it's repetitive type of analysis of not doing it once and then redoing it, right? It's that, so we can continue to be good and exceed expectations. But for me, I'm just a passionate person when it comes to life. Like I when it comes to my son's baseball, right? It's good to be part of that too.
I'm always trying to figure out, I have 2 boys. I'm hyper competitive. My oldest one is hyper competitive. My younger one shows hyper competitiveness, but not in everything. And my younger one is really hyper competitive in school, or not in school, and like other things like video games. But he's extremely good at school, but he wants to get A's. My older one, zero passion for school, didn't get good grades, but passion for other things. He was a day trader at 13, paid for his own course to learn how to do that. And so I don't know if it's the parenting and seeing that and mapping your parents and if I don't know if it's that. I'm always trying to figure out where does passion come from within people? What drives them? Because that to me is one of the most important things in life and in success at anything. I don't care what you have a passion in, you're going to be good at it if you have passion because it will motivate you and drive you.
Yeah, I think because even if you go back to my decision around being a math teacher, I can tell you if that's what I ended up doing, I would not have been good at it, right? Because it wasn't my passion, right? And so everyone's got that passion. They just got to find what that is.
So you believe everybody has that?
I believe you have it. It's just you got to find what it is. And some people it's easier than others. It's interesting. Here's a story that my a founder at Medic he shared with me is his father-in-law is mid-90s. He just learned a couple years ago he has the ability and the passion for art. It took him 90 something years to figure that out. I haven't seen the art, but my understanding is not only is he passionate about it, he's amazing at it, right?
Fascinating.
So, right? So sometimes you just don't know when that you're going to come across, but I truly do believe it's in everybody. Just you got to find what that is.
I kind of just followed my passion. I mean, I have a degree in biology, right? So that has nothing to do with what I'm doing now, but I just really loved learning how things worked. So I started out as an electrical engineer and I found out I wasn't good at math or programming, which you need to be for an electrical engineer. So I was like, well, what doesn't take a lot of higher math? Well, mapping things out in a forest just was addition and subtraction and some multiplication. So I didn't need more than that. So that's why I picked biology. And I I had a great passion for it. I just couldn't find a job in it. So, okay. So you started out in insurance and you did that for a number of years. And then all of a sudden you switched. You went to LifeLock and then you went to, which is basically, what is that, a finance? What's that considered?
LifeLock. So it's still a form of insurance, right?
Okay.
Because it's one of those, I actually had my identity stolen, which
Okay.
was after I left LifeLock, but I had LifeLock, thank God. And so, it's again, you're selling a promise that you'll deliver when something happens. And so, it was different than insurance, but still in the same general industry.
And then you went to into banking for a little bit, and then you switched to health. So I'm kind of curious about switching those industries. How was that for you?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And that kind of why I left the Hartford. Because again, I had a mentor when I was younger, and Travelers is literally like 3 blocks down the road, right? So there's always traffic going back and forth between the two companies. And I'm sitting there at 9 years in at the Hartford, and I'm like, what do I do from here? And I actually was told like go somewhere else. The Hartford way, but there's other ways to go. And so that led to me moving, to Travelers. And then, I moved on to another insurance company as well. And then I was like, well, I'm quickly becoming an insurance guy, right? And so I don't want to be an insurance guy. I mean, I could, but if I want to leave Connecticut, becoming an insurance guy is a little more difficult. That kind of led me to getting exposure, to other industries. It's interesting too, because as a CFO or in finance in general, I always have the question of, well, you need manufacturing experience, or you need healthcare experience, or you need, and to me, finance is finance. The same core concepts, right? The same strategy. And so, one thing I will say that I encourage, those coming out of school is, don't feel like you're locked into an industry, right? Don't feel once you're in insurance, you're insurance, right? Because our skill set is so valuable and so transferable across. It really, again, passion. What industry are you passionate about, right? I love insurance, to be honest. Like, I love the data aspect of it, right? The numbers and the modeling and the probabilities and how you set rates. Like that to me is, super, super interesting.
I'm glad it is for somebody.
Yeah, for some it's like, yeah, that's so dry, right? So what I can tell you is regardless of where I'm at, what company I'm at, what industry, it needs to involve numbers, right? Data, strategy, and having a seat at the table to make sure that we're driving the right future and the right decisions today that aren't about tomorrow or next month, but about 3, 6, 5 years from now.
So it's funny, you went back to insurance again. And that's where you built this FP&A group that you're proud of. How were you qualified to be a CFO, and how did that come knocking on the door?
Yeah.
And tell me about that.
So if you look at my career, it's kind of 3 to 4 years was like my sweet spot, right, of roles. I don't know if that was by design or just natural. Like, okay, I'm ready for something new, right?
A little restless.
Right. So I was there in my role before I came to Medics, and a recruiter called and had,
Gosh darn recruiters.
I know. And it's like, yeah, it's in the health industry, and it's a CFO, and you're one of 3 candidates, and the other 2 have experience in the industry. What do you think? And I'm like, sure, let's do this, right? And I remember I was actually on vacation back east when I was having the conversations, and then I had to present to the founder and then the GM as well, and other members of the leadership team. I was given a homework assignment, right? And so I had to look at our industry. What are some of the industry challenges? Look at a couple of large agency holding companies who are our primary customers, and tell them what they need to be prepared for. And I'm sitting there going, I know nothing about this industry, right? I know nothing about the company. How am I going to do this, right? And again, it came down to, I'm going to go research. I'm going to go
the internet this time, right?
All right. I'm going to go listen to conference calls, right? I'm going to go look at their financials. I'm going to go just explore what's going on in the space, look at the company's competitors to see who else is out there and what are they, what can I glean from public knowledge. And I threw together, a 8 to 10 page, kind of story around, here's what the things I think we need to be, focused and really starting to build a plan around, because it's coming. And it felt so weird, right? Sitting there presenting to them where I know nothing about the industry, and trying to tell them what they should be doing was interesting. But I remember walking away, being done, standing up, and being like, okay, that felt good. Walking out the door, saying the thanks and the handshakes, and then getting in the car, and literally within 5 minutes, my phone rings, and the recruiter says,
"You're the one.
You nailed it. They're working on an offer, and you'll have it shortly."
When you were in that meeting, were they engaged with you, and they're like, do you feel like you maybe gave them some insight that they hadn't thought of themselves because of your outsider view?
I absolutely, because there was a lot of questions and a lot of, wow, I didn't think of that. Again, that's where I'm a curious person. Like, I'm just naturally curious. If I see something or I see a way that we can do something better, I'm going to roll up my sleeves. I'm going to go all in and try to figure out, why in the solution and the story. And so I think it's just that natural ability for me to just, all right, this is good. I'll pick this up. I'll do the research. I'll speak to it as if I understand the business, knowing that half of what I'm saying, like, I'm so out of turn of talking about. But it's, and we'll probably talk a little bit about is interview prep is so important, right? You got to do your homework. You got to, and it's not browsing, the internet for 10 minutes before. It's hours of prep and really understanding what's going on, researching the company, researching the interviewers, researching the competitors, because the more you do that, and it's also about mock presentations. I probably did that presentation if a dozen plus times, right? Just to continue to hone in. And not only that, was you had X number of minutes to present it. And so you really got to, work on, all right, how much can I spend on this page? And it's all about preparation. And if you prepare, you're going to be naturally confident, right? You're going to have that presence, and that's priceless.
You sound like you're giving my pitch of why, when I do my executive prep to people, why it's so important.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So I'm going to jump off of that just for a second, because I always tell people that people hire people they like, but they hire people that act like they're interested in working for them.
Mm.
If you come in and you don't have any questions prepared, then you act like you just kind of showed up and you're just there. And so the number one way to show that you're interested in the position is to come in with questions based on your research, deep research. Here's what looking at some of the things that these might be some of the problems that you're facing. Is this accurate?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you approach those? And we didn't talk about this beforehand, but that is so beautiful what you just said. And it's so important for people to listen to that, because I don't know that they teach that in school. I don't think that they do.
And that's, as an interviewer, right? I'm very conversational. Like, I don't.
Yeah, I could tell you're good at telling stories.
Right? I don't come with a list of questions, right? I know what the questions are in my mind, right? But it's more about the conversation and did you do your homework, right? What do you know about us? Do you understand kind of what we're looking for? And do you can know right away whether that person has the passion for what they want to do or not. You can just immediately pick up on it. So
that's fact.
And I don't want scripted answers, right? I want to really feel that excitement and that energy in your voice and your desire to really want to be, and your understanding of what we're going to be. Because I always tell interviewees, right, the same thing of, your job is to make sure this is the right fit for you as much as it's to make sure that this is the right fit for us, right? And so it goes both ways. And so ask away, right? Feel comfortable doing so.
Yeah, that's so brilliant. So you get into the seat. You've got the C title now. Do you know what you're doing? Is it natural progression for you, or was that a big learning experience?
Yeah, it's funny. So, I get there, and when you're in finance and FP&A, you kind of know that aspect of it, right? But then I realized, right, there's all this tax filing stuff, right, and audits and other filings around 401ks and making sure you're in compliance that I've never had exposure to. But it was that learning as I went through it, right? It's not rocket science, right? It's just making sure that you understand and you have the right partners in place, right, to help you navigate that as well. So of course there was learnings, no doubt, right, early on. I think our biggest learning was COVID, right? I joined in.
What's that?
Yeah,
never heard of it.
Yeah, right. I joined in August of 19. First time CFO, right? Companies kind of in this, we're kind of floundering from a growth perspective, and not making money, and hence why I was brought in to kind of position us, for the future. And then COVID hits, right? You want to talk about getting thrown into the fire, and having to make really tough decisions for the sake of the business. I couldn't, as I look back, I could not have had a better experience and picked a better time to go through that than then.
Did you have a strong accounting team?
I did. So, we're a relatively small company. So, we had a pretty solid controller, and we had a staff accountant. So literally our team was two on the accounting side. We had a outside audit firm that did our annual audits. Plus they were there for our, kind of really in-depth questions that if we needed assistance. So they were helpful there. But yeah, I needed, without having that accounting back, I needed to ensure I had a strong, controller in place. And that was one of the requirements when I came in was, I can handle the strategy and the forward thinking, no problem. But you've got to make sure we have a solid accounting, team in place.
So let's now do the plug for accounting. How important is it to have a strong controller?
Incredibly important. If it wasn't for our controller and our, certainly our current controller at the company, my job would have been a heck of a lot more difficult. I want to focus on the business. That's where I want to spend my energy and time, is making sure we're growing the business and we're making the right decisions. I need to ensure that our accounting is solid. But being a CFO, I have accountability to that accounting too, right? So it's not as if, I just sign things blindly, but it's making sure that we have the right controls in place, making sure we have the right cross checks. Because in finance, it's funny. I always say, I can guarantee you, I've never hit a forecast dead on, right? I'm 0 for ever, right? On a forecast. I've been close, right? Which is what we want to be. But in accounting, you can't be close, right? You need to be dead on. And so it's a different discipline. It's a different mindset. And just having somebody there that you can rely on and is not afraid to, hey, I'm not sure about this, right? Can I reach out to our accounting? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, I want you to feel confident if you're not sure, to make that decision.
So you join, and then you go through COVID, and then all of a sudden you are a first-time CFO, and now you're gearing up for a sale. When did that come into the conversation?
For sure. So I joined, it was of the understanding that, we're building this for an exit in 3 to 5 years. And hence the reason for bringing in more of a strategic, mindset, is to position us for that. And so, we did go to market in 2021, full process. I didn't think we were quite ready yet. It's like one of those where we had started building the products, but we didn't have the revenue. So I kind of the analogy of the Shark Tank, right? You hear so many people go on that show that have amazing ideas, amazing products, amazing concepts. And then the first question is, well, how much revenue do you have? And it's, I got about
I've sold 5.
And then you lose all interest, right? And so to get the full valuation that you need, we got to make sure we have the actual revenue track and path to support it. And we just weren't there yet. And we found that out as part of the process that, we needed to generate some real revenue before we could get there. And then, we kind of said, all right, well, we got another couple of years, right, to get us there. So let's focus on execution and ensuring we have the right product set up. And we started going forward. And then what led to the interest in the company is we had a competitor of ours that was purchased and acquired. And we were one of the few players out there that were still independent. And so, a couple of people who were there, but they didn't get the deal.
They were hungry.
And so the phone started ringing and we answered. And so we went through that process. I got to tell you, it was absolutely the most intense 6 to 9 months of my career.
That's what I've heard.
It was not only the for myself, but for my team, right? Because, anytime you're in this potential acquisition, everything's got to be very tight-lipped, right? Because you don't want to distract from the business. You want us to make sure that we're not taking our eye off the ball. So even from a leadership team, it's a very small subset that knows about it. We're still trying to run the business, yet trying to pull together decks and have these meetings, and people are coming in the office, and it's like, who are these people, right? And so you're trying to do the right thing along the way. But my biggest concern is we can't take our eye off the business, right? Because if that goes away, it doesn't matter. But yeah, the diligence, the data rooms, the pitch after the pitch after the pitch, and then the quality of earnings, right, which is huge on the finance and accounting side. Preparing for that and making sure that we're in a good spot, and literally an 8-hour session where you're just getting pegged with questions. It was intense, right? And then getting calls, right? We got to update the forecast. So it was all worth it, though. I mean, it was such a great experience to go through that. And see that when the vision we had when I joined, and to actually see it come to fruition and be able to deliver on the promises that we had made, not only to ourselves, right, but our shareholders, our owner, and our employees. And so it was by far the most challenging, yet the most exciting period in my career.
Did you ever think it was dead, like towards the end?
So, yeah, so we had a few interested parties, and along the way, and it's like one of those, you'll lose one, and then you'll get another one, and again you're rehashing these same pitches,
All
right?
over. You probably got pretty good
Right.
after a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah. It's like, all right, can we just, let's grab the one from last
Can we
week, dust
video
it,
it?
dust it off,
Just-
right? Let's tailor the responses to the questions, right? But then you got to meet with their bankers, and then you got to meet with their product team, and you're rehashing the same stuff, and yeah, and then along the way, your pipeline changes, and so you're trying to make sure that, okay, how is that impacting what we're saying, or how the deal's gonna come together, and other things happen in the industry that you're so far in the process that you're trying to manage the expectations along the way. So yeah, in 2021 it was, I kind of didn't think we would have a suitor, but and with this process, given we were one of the last left, I was pretty confident that we would find that right fit. It was just a matter of with who, and then the timing of it.
So you worked yourself out of a job.
I did. I did. I did. It's one of those things, right? Where, going in, I knew that was a possibility. Depends on who your acquirer is, right? If it's a PE in your portfolio company, it's probably, I'm just in the, second inning of a 9 inning game, right? In this case, it was a public company who already had a CFO, and for me, it really came down to what is my passion, what I want to do. I love the private sector now. Being in that, I mean, I've worked for public, and I'm now in the private, of going through that, and just the nimbleness, and how do we kind of compete with the big boys, right? And the criticality of making sure that we're being really thoughtful around resources and deployment of capital, and we don't have money to just throw out, right? We got to be really strategic yet tactical, right? Around where we place resources and capital, um, and just always trying to be in front of our competition, always trying to think, what are they doing better, or what are we doing better that we gotta, we just got to market it better. I love the private company feel, and so yeah, if you talk about passion, that's I would love to do it all over again. Another exit in 3 to 5 years, and a similar company, a similar situation.
All right, all listeners, let's help Scott out. Spread the word on that. All right, please. I think just like every one of these accolades that you have, the next company will be lucky to have you.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is it's a blessing, right? I mean, going through the exit, it does give me a time to like decompress a little bit, right? Enjoy time with the family, like just get myself, health wise, right? Do the things that I always wanted to do, or I've been wanting to do, I keep putting on the back burner, and just recharging, right?
Because that grind going into a sale is it's no joke.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Mentally and physically exhausting. So before we wrap up, tell me what advice, or well, let's do this one. What would you go back and tell your younger self? Because I think you've learned a lot.
Yeah, it's funny. I think my biggest thing too is I always tell myself I have zero regrets in life. You make some good decisions, you make some bad decisions, right? But the bad decisions make you better, and the good decisions hopefully are naturally are gonna propel you forward. One thing I would have done earlier is networking. I had a mentor, which, if you want to talk about, absolutely have a mentor when you're early in your career, or someone that you can confide in. I can't tell you how valuable it was when you run into certain situations, right? Certain challenges that have someone who has the experience that you can, confide in, and they can help you through that. So absolutely have a mentor. Network. I wasn't very good at that earlier in my career, and I do think that that's incredibly valuable. You never know, right? It's one of those, you become a community, right? Things start happening, but you also get to learn. Like I'm on a couple networking groups now where the stuff that we talk about, even if it's not exactly an issue, a situation I'm in, it's something similar, right? And so you get to hear the best of the best and so many bright minds just talk about how they would navigate the situation. It's priceless. So absolutely do that. And the other thing too is extend yourself, right? Challenge yourself. Put your neck out there, right? If there's a project that's available that, may not be kind of in your wheelhouse or you're not sure, raise your hand, right? Put yourself out there. And I will tell you, you will find that experience and your ability to suddenly you're comfortable, right, in those environments. A lot of people aren't comfortable in those environments. And so you learn, you repeat, you learn, you repeat, and then before you know it, you're going to be a leader.
I think that is a great place to end this because we have to do a part two. There's so much more to unpack with you and what you can provide to people, but just what you said there at the end there, young people should listen to that over and over again because, as you know, having kids, you can't just tell them once, right? You got to say it multiple times for it to sink in, but very valuable. And I really do. Our time's up. I really do appreciate you bringing yourself here and sharing your wisdom, your knowledge with our audience. I thank you. Can't thank you enough.
This is great. Thank you for the opportunity.
Fantastic. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, maybe to talk to you more about what we talked about or talk to you about maybe your next gig, how do they contact you?
Yeah, so I think LinkedIn by far is the best. I'm on there quite a bit. I'm always on there, whether I'm in my situation where or I just love the content that's out there. There's so much to learn from others. I share a lot of other people's posts, right? Just because there's an opportunity for us all to learn. So absolutely reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll respond pretty quickly because that's just how I'm wired. Yeah, I would love to continue to build a connection with those, whether it's someone who's looking for advice or anything else, right? Just reach out to me.
I too am on LinkedIn. If you want to reach out to me, it's probably one of the first. Maybe I open my email and then open LinkedIn. So I am on it for the rest of the day, the duration of the day. So you can reach me on there at any time, or you can Google Chad Dean Integrated Management, and I come up first. I'm pretty proud of that. Well, thank you, Scott, and appreciate it.
Thank you. I really
Enjoy the
appreciate
rest of your day.
You got it.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Financial Footsteps, Candid Conversations with Financial Leaders. We encourage you to apply the knowledge and wisdom shared in these conversations to your own career. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Your feedback is important to us as we continue to bring you more candid conversations and thought-provoking insights from successful financial leaders.